Good evening and welcome all to Night with Joanna Lumley, OBE, Fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, Certified National Treasure, Fellow of BAFTA. I'm Libby Purvis, not only a fan of Joanna's, but of Grange Park Opera, who are the partner in this evening, which is for you loyal Telegraph subscribers. Jo, of course, is a trustee of Grange Park Opera and looking forward, as I am, to its summer. All our fingers and vaccinated arms carefully crossed. But now is the time when we unveil her, the evening star attraction, Joanna Lumley herself.
I'm sorry about that. That seemed to take forever.
Well,
having practiced how to join you, it suddenly wouldn't take my command. I mean, this is the story of my life, really.
Welcome to our screens. There are 648 people out there. Say hello to everybody nicely. Can I just ask you something which is very much of the year? Do you get self-conscious or shy about how you look on screens? Because even a lot of actors do, and a lot of people on Zoom can't bear looking at themselves in the tiny box. Has a whole lifetime with cameras made you immune to that? Are you kind of totally cool with being stared at?
I'm used to being stared at because it's my job, both as a model to begin with, and then, of course, as an actress. And in fact, you rather hope you will be stared at. You hope people's eyes don't slide off you and go to something much more interesting. But what I did learn quite early on is the importance of lighting. And as I've got older and older, I've discovered what I call the Barbara Cartland School of Lighting, which is to train. At the moment, I've got 4 lamps focused sharply on my face so that I should just appear as sort of a hair, like a piece of wig, and 2 eyes and a mouth, and that's all you'll see. And that hides a multitude of sins. But actually, Libby, the biggest shock, I think, for everybody is to hear your voice. People go, oh, I don't sound like that, do I? And then to see your face. And as it's my job, I've had to get over those 2 horrifying hurdles quite early on, and you just give in to it.
You mentioned that you started out as a model, and I know you were in swinging London, Carnaby Street. You know, you sort of came in when that had already kind of got going. What kind of life was it, modelling then? I, being just a few years younger, I used to sort of gaze at models, think, what a wonderful life, all partying, all laughter, all so on. But at the same time, you thought they must think of nothing but, oh, is their skin all right? Is their body all right? I mean, how was it? What sort of life was it?
I have to say the standard was much lower. If you look back to old magazines, if you can find any from the 60s, you go, good Lord, because we did our own makeup, we did our own hair, we did our own accessories. That meant jewellery and bags and shoes and scarves and things like that. We had our own wigs and we stuck them on ourselves. I mean, it was all much more amateurish. We were paid far less money. I mean, it was much better pay than shop girls, but it really wasn't buy a yacht in the Mediterranean. And much, much later came somebody like Cindy Crawford, who said she wouldn't get out of bed before, you know, without $10,000 or something. My God, we got 4 guineas an hour for editorial work and 5 guineas an hour for advertising, which seemed to us like a king's ransom. And as you would work quite often 6 hours a day, that's a lot of money. 6 5s are 30 guineas a day. But it wasn't kind of lunatic money. But it was lovely. It was lovely, and I loved it. I loved having to get used to doing so much stuff yourself, and that stood me in good stead, because all the travel programs I do, I have to provide, of course, all my own clothes and do my own makeup and hair and make sure that I'm ironed down and that I look suitable for the right occasions and so on. And so it stood me in good stead. I'm pleased about that. And also the Barbara Cartland lighting. It's always been useful.
Yes, I've never talk of the skills, I've never forgotten your fashioning yourself a pair of slippers out of a bra on a desert island for some television program long
That was
ago.
right.
That was
it was Girl Friday, and my feet were I was getting actually sort of trench foot, which means your feet are beginning to rot away, because I was wearing trainers. I had no real change of anything. The rocks were volcanic, rather like walking on the edge of razor blades. And in my little cave where I'd set up a home while the rain still pelted down, my feet would get cut. I couldn't get them dry because I didn't have a towel. I wasn't given anything to kind of exist with. And so I cut my bra in half and put a cup around each bit of the insole lining of my trainers, and fashioned with my needle and thread, which had been given to me by the SAS. So you can't say I'm not well provided for. I cut it in the thread neatly in half so I'd have exactly enough for each little shoe. They came out the most delightful little espadrilles, little tiny, sweet little slippers. They looked so beautiful.
Is there any chance they're in the V&A now? Because they should.
No, I was going to bury them in my coffin in case I had to walk around heaven. But then I thought, well, do you know, they're sort of interesting because people never really believed it. And when you see it, you'll see how homemade they are and that necessity is the mother of invention.
Well, I think they should be in the V&A. Major. You said, were you always, I mean, I know that you've said that RADA, the acting school, the most famous acting school in the world, turned you down when you were 16. But when you went into modelling, were you already effortlessly stylish? Did you know about style,
No.
how to look? Were you one of those girls, you know, those little girls who were just fabulous from the age of 4 and stay that way? Were you one of those?
Just in every way, no. My hair was frizzly. I had spots, not terrific amount of spots, but enough to make you go, oh my God, and to sit especially like that so you could hide a spot during the entire evening. You can't do that in modelling. The photographers are quite brutal to us and they go, here's spotty, get on with that. Or you look a bit of a mess. You tried to keep slim. You did the best you could to keep slim. Nobody was anorexic in those days because nobody did exercises. No, the idea of this sort of gym fit body came miles later. We just ate less if we were getting fat. We were very friendly to each other and kind to each other. But it was, I took a long time. We weren't catwalk models. That was considered a bit not quite as chic as photographic models. And we weren't glamour models, which meant getting your tits out. I'm sorry, Telegraph readers, that was a horrible thing to say, which meant not stripping. We weren't those kind of people. We were photographic people on the fronts of Vogue and Flair and Vanity Fair and Woman's Own, holding lovely sort of lycra sweaters and things like this and laughing at fruit and being jolly with our own lip gloss. It was a fine life. It was not quite boring. It was both taxing and tiring. But at the same time, I knew it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to be a model. You just became a model because virtually anybody could, really.
And of course, it became the one part of the route into acting. But I mean, I wonder, you were a boarding school kid because, of course, you're daughter of the Raj, born in India and sent back to boarding schools in England. And that leaves a mark on people, doesn't it? Often, it seems to me, it's actually quite a useful mark because it means you know how to get along with people and you know how to kind of control yourself and be in a community. Has that been, do you think, a useful thing to you in your later life?
I think it's terribly useful. And all the people who say, you know, they go to jail and they say, well, it's not as bad as being at Eton and things like that. I think there is some truth in this, that having been at boarding school, my parents didn't send me away. They'd both been sent back from India to board when they were little children, 7 or 8 years old, and my father didn't see his parents for 3 or 4 whole years, being shunted around with godparents or guardians or things like this. They having had that child, and thought they would never do that for us. But we did go to boarding school. It just seemed to be something that you did. I suppose they did it. We quite often do what our parents do. You just do it because you don't really think it through. Also, my father was still in the army and went back to Malaya, and my mother went to join him. So we were there at school, and you know, it was all. I'm quite a cheerful character, so I get on fine, you know. So after a little bit of boohoo, then you get completely fine, and I loved it. I loved my second school, which was a very nice Anglican convent in Sussex, in the hills behind Hastings. And the nuns were blue stockings. They wanted to teach. That's all they cared about was ancient Greek and physics and chemistry and things. They didn't try to make us holy, but they wanted to make us fit women for the outside world and interested and interesting. And so I loved that.
Yes, there's nothing. I had them too. Either learned nuns. There's nothing like learned nuns to be brought up. Being raised by wolves altogether. But moving on to the acting, I know you had an early break as a Bond girl. I believe you were one of Blofeld's Angels of Death on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And you in Coronation Street, I had completely forgotten the fact that Ken Barlow wanted to marry you. You could have been still there. What a nightmare.
I was written as just an interlude. His wife had just been killed by a hair dryer, which was tragic, and the whole world was in shock. What would handsome Ken be doing now? And he was heartbroken. And I was the schoolmaster's daughter. And I shimmered into his life. I was so overexcited, Libby, at doing this, I can't tell you. Coronation Street, even then, Corrie was really something, it was real acting. So I dyed my hair, which was probably red or something. I loved to dye my hair different colors. I mean, I dyed it brown to show that I was a serious actress, not frivolous at all. And I said, if I'm okay at this, will you keep me in? They said, no, you're in for 8 episodes and you're out. I said, but Ken might sort of like me. I might say yes to his request to marry him. He said, no, you'll be out after 8. So I was out after 8 episodes. I loved it.
I just watched a clip of it today, actually. He was a right old lounge lizard, actually, very sort of smooth, I thought, in his wooing with you. But I don't know, would you go back? I mean, suppose they suddenly decided...
They did, Libby, about 6, 7 years ago. They said, oh, by the way, Elaine Perkins, my character's name, we decided she comes back, and she comes maybe on a barge or something into Manchester, and links up one of those old things where you think,
that was you again, was it? You came back.
No, I didn't. I couldn't do it. So somebody else came instead of me. A very famous actress did it instead of me. I'm not going to say her name because she'll be extremely pleased to hear it. I was jealous as hell of her. I can't actually remember whether it was Stephanie Beecham or I can't remember, but it was somebody who went back in and stole his heart again.
I would have known if it was you.
Mind you, we get muddled up because lots of us are pretty much the same, you know, both in modelling and acting. Lots of people write to me and ask me to sign a photograph that isn't me at all.
Do you mind? Does that annoy you? No. Does that upset you?
No. Sometimes if I'm really polite, I put a stick post-it note or something and say, sorry, this isn't me. Sometimes I just think I might as well sign that name in a completely different kind of handwriting.
You had a lot of parts that followed the because the big break was the new Avengers, wasn't it? Is it you were Purdy, though I believe they didn't want to call the character Purdy.
No, she was called Charlie. But at the time there was a scent out, which was a girl walking along swinging her bag going Charlie, and the music, and I said, you can't call her Charlie. Was it Charlie's Girl? The film had just come out, and I said, Charlie's just overworked. I would like to be Charlie's Angels. I would like to be called Purdy. There had been a model.
You made that up. You made up your own name.
Yeah, I did for that. But there was a craze in modelling. Bailey was called Bailey. Nobody's ever called him David. His name's Bailey. And Duffy, whose name was Brown Duffy, was always called Duffy. And it became a thing that we called each other by our surnames. And there was a model called Sue Purdy. God bless her, she's still alive. Spelt differently, and I thought Purdy, that's a good name because it can be the name of that very good shotgun, and that sort of suits my character a bit. And so I became Purdy, EY at the end. Also, I wanted to cut my hair short. I thought she'd be a no-nonsense, business-like girl. She's up after catching crooks. She wouldn't have long, soppy hair. They put me in lots of long, soppy dresses and stockings and high heels, which was awful. At least I had my short hair.
We have to look back at those days at the way that women and actresses and beautiful actresses were looked at and were remarked about and were expected to flash a bit of leg. Did that impinge on you, and did you mind? You know, the business of show us some stocking love. Did that
impinge? It was absolutely mandatory, and if you didn't want to do it, they'd go, are you an actress or not? And as I hadn't been to drama school, I've since discovered how many people were turned down by RADA. I feel much cheered by that. They turned down all kinds of people. Doesn't matter, they have to turn people down. They can't take everybody. But because I'd been a model, which is the worst thing you could have been in those days to become an actress, because they just thought you were just fluff and ridiculous and wouldn't be able to learn a line. And in fact, I'd been doing Portia at school when I was 10, you know. That's the reason I wanted to become an actress, was because of Shakespeare, which incidentally, I've never done professionally. I've never been asked to do any Shakespeare. Just, anyway.
Bring it on.
Bring it on. ancient Juliet. I've completely talked myself off the track there. Why? What was I waffling on about? I was actually on a serious.
We were talking about the way that women were
looked
at.
Everybody had to take their tops off. That was, you know, you just see it with Vanessa Redgrave, Glenda Jackson, you name it, Jacqueline Bisset. You know, everybody had to strip their tops off. That was completely part of the course. And now it's only now looking. I mean, I hated it. I've never been a single person who likes to get their clothes off, or indeed people who like to do love scenes. Everybody was revolted by love scenes. Watching them, because I'm an actress anyway, I just go, oh, come on, come on. We all know it's everybody pretending and it's revolting. Come on, get it over with. Stop all that wet kissing. So I realised I've got the mind of an 8-year-old boy. You know, get on, move on. Let's bring the guns out. Anyway.
Riffling through old pictures, the way that one sort of can't help doing it, sort of think, oh, is that thing something else? I found one of you with a sort of a revolver tucked in your stocking top for Purdy. That was quite
That was the
picture,
picture.
wasn't it?
My hair was brown and longer then because I hadn't cut it yet for the part. I hadn't persuaded them that I would be able to have short hair. And that was the announcement of Joanna Lumley was going to play the new Avengers girl. And they put me in a flimsy, flimsy dress with flimsy high heels. And the press said, we'd like you to stick a gun in the top of your stocking top, Joanna. And I said, but I'm wearing tights. They said, we're not going to take the picture unless you're wearing stockings with a gun stuck in the top of it. So we went into the Dorchester Hotel outside which we were doing this photo shoot. And we found a quite ordinary woman walking quietly across the lobby, and we got her, wrestled her to the ground, tore off, looked at her pants and could see she was wearing stockings. So we took off her suspender belt and her stockings. We gave her £5 or something. And I put them on and they were too short. So in that photograph, you can see the stocking tops are different kinds because she was not expecting to show her stocking tops to the world. Anyway, in that jaunty picture with me with, guess what, a bowler hat and showing, and the gun and the knee up to show a bit of leg, a bit of thigh. That's, everything was like that in those days, Libby. Do you know, you just did it. You just did it. I hate having to have done it, which was why when I eventually was asked to do stage parts like Hedda Gabler and Madame Ranievskaya, it was sweet as a nut. I never really do those on television. I'm still either I'm glamorous bitch or glamorous or something. But on stage, I'm allowed to do different things.
In my dreams, that woman who you ripped the stockings off is among our 600 and something viewers tonight and will step up, madam, and say, yes, that was me. I am so proud. I still have the fiver. I framed it because, of course, you were already a name. Joanna Lumley was already a name because of the modelling. There were, as you say, heaps and heaps of parts afterwards. Your acting career carried on, and that's fine. But there came this moment, the absolutely fabulous moment, and you weren't actually part of the original French and Saunders sketch. They'd invented the two characters of the daughter and the mother and so on, and then Patsy was invented and brought in as Adina's fashionista friend, and it was extraordinary. She was born instantaneously, wasn't she? She just became part of all our lives very, very quickly, and we knew her and you knew her. I mean, where did she come from? The look, the manner, everything. She sprang up, and it wasn't just script. I know that because it was you as well.
Well, look, I was desperate to get Jennifer Saunders. I didn't know Jennifer, and she didn't know me. And I'm not sure Adrian Edmondson, her husband, didn't say, why don't you try Joanna Lumley for that part? And so we went up and did a sort of reading together, me and Jennifer. And she seemed she's quite shy anyway, but she was just kind of nothing. And I thought, oh, this is awful. She hates me. She doesn't. She's too polite to say she can't bear me. I went home and said to my agent, can you get me out of this? Because it's a fantastic part, but I don't think she likes me and it's not going to work. The agent said, oh, just do it. It's a pilot. You know, it might not even take off. So I just did it. But what my aim was to get Jennifer to laugh, to try to get her to laugh. Quite soon, I don't know why, I had this idea that she would have her hair up and have very, very red lips. I loved that idea that she'd have yellow hair and red lips. And somebody once told me, never change, when you're in something that's a comedy, never change your look because people will want you, like a cartoon character, like the Roadrunner or something. You want to always go beep, 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 and they'll know that's a Roadrunner. And they'll know that if you've got your hair up and your lipstick on and a cigarette, that you are Patsy. Then that'll be a shortcut to everything. Once you've established that. So I sort of played around with the idea of how she would look. And then we had this idea that she'd had many of her insides taken out and probably her bottom removed as well. So she had a slight hunch because all her innards had gone. And she became more and more ludicrous. Jennifer, who's the most generous and extraordinary writer in the world, just loved her. And as it kind of got madder and madder, she wrote madder and madder things. You know, Patsy went and had some operation in Morocco, had something stitched on and took pills and things and grew a small moustache. And then it didn't work and the thing dropped off and she shaved her moustache and came back to being a woman again. I mean, she was completely gender fluid and sort of, she hadn't eaten since 1974. She lived off drink. So she became a piece of paradise for me. We used to just cry with laughter. Not only us, but Adina as well. I mean, all the parts made us all cry with laughter. In rehearsals, when we did it live in front of an audience every Friday night, we were paralyzed with fear, determined to get it right. Because when you're doing comedy, you don't want to have to do a gag which goes wrong or drop lines. So we all tried our very hardest all the time. But sometimes it became too much for us and we laughed.
You once said to me that one of the secrets of Patsy was a certain expression on your face, the one you were always told to take off your face when you were at school.
Yeah.
You know, that face that sort of sullen.
Patsy was a great admirer, not only of Ivana Trump. She liked her hair. She didn't copy it, but she liked it. But she was a great admirer of Elvis. I think she thought she'd slept with him. She hadn't, but she thought she had. And she liked the way Elvis laughed, which was that he never opened his mouth and laughed marvelously. He just went, and I think Patsy thought she looked pretty cool if that's about as far as she went. So her mouth was always sort of sullen. And because her shoulders were always rounded, and she always had sort of lizard-like eyes slipping around the room, looking for a drink, or a man. That's how she sort of became. And her voice got much damaged by a great deal of smoking, great deal of drinking, and also hanging out with the Rolling Stones. I don't think she did. She felt she did.
But it was wonderful, because I mean, the world suddenly realised that after you'd done all this acting, that you were this unbeatable, smashing comic talent, and absolutely fearless. I mean, the humiliating positions into which Patsy has to fall and hurl herself around, and the awful look she has to have. Some actors find it difficult to do that, especially if their whole life has been, as you say, glamour. You know, you've been pigeonholed as glamour. I know, but you see,
before I was a model and before I was an actress, I was a clown. I was a fool. I was a clown. My job, I loved making people laugh. That's what I loved. And as I've always been slightly shocked at what I looked like in the mirror. I always kind of think, oh, I really look like that. I've never thought of that. So whenever Patsy would I just loved her going badly wrong. I just loved dim things she would do, or how unbelievably stupid or disgusting they looked. We would think, I mean, when you think of Adina too, buying clothes size 8 when she was clearly size 16, Jennifer used to wear a padded body under that, straining to get into clothes. We all know people wearing very expensive things which don't fit and don't suit them. We just wanted to look repellent, and the more ridiculous and revolting we looked, the more people loved them.
There are more and more female actors actually willing to do this now, aren't there? It seems to be on the up. I mean, if I look back even a generation at things like Not the 9 O'Clock News, you know, she was always rather gorgeous. Whatever she was doing, she was always gorgeous. But I think it's rather wonderful that women are not minding looking like train wrecks now. It's exciting in a way, isn't it? We can be as daft as men.
I think so, because women were pretty much, for a long, long time, we were the lovely ones, and you always had to look extremely beautiful if you were going to be an actress. An actress, you had to be very beautiful. You go, hang on a second, if you're a beauty queen, I understand that. But if you're an actress, you're just an actress. That means you're playing a part. Why do you have to be beautiful? A few people who are not technically beauties crept under the net, starting with Dame Flora Robson, who was no great beauty, but she was a great actress. And then people became great actresses without being necessarily great beauties. But if you look at them, they've got good faces, and their face can be plain or lovely. But on the whole, women were expected to look lovely in film. So film stars are always fabulously beautiful. Whereas people like Humphrey Bogart could have lined cheeks and furrowed brows and all sorts of things. And it's always been unfair. And guess what, Libby? It's always going to be unfair. I know people are always trying to reach for parity. I have a funny feeling it will never happen, because in the whole long time that human beings have been alive, for some reason, women have always had to look good for men to like them. And men have always had to be attractive for women to like them. And attractive means they might have lots of money, or might be good at something, or might look as though they could provide. They didn't have to be handsome necessarily. It helped, but it didn't have to be so.
Yes, it was rather a nice thing, and we must talk about opera. Have you, how keen you are on opera, because you know, Grange Park Opera partner tonight, and you're on the trustee board of it. It seemed to me that actually there was a wonderful period when opera singers, women opera singers, were allowed to look basically like elephants, and then suddenly they weren't anymore. Suddenly people wanted them to look glamorous. It actually stepped backwards a bit, didn't it? Are you an opera buff yourself?
Buff, no, passionate follower. Because of course I'm married to a conductor who conducts pretty much mostly opera, and he's taught me a lot about it. And he was very interesting about this, because in the old days, I mean, he's been conducting. He cut his teeth at Glyndebourne and then worked on operas all around the world. But in the old days, the voice was everything, and people thought you should just go to the theatre, the opera house, and be grateful for the sound. And then gradually it began to creep in where more and more directors, and maybe even the public, said, hang on, if she's playing this drop-dead gorgeous woman, maybe she should look a little bit better than that. Maybe she shouldn't look like 10-ton Tessie. I'll probably be killed for even saying that. But the truth is, maybe she should look a little bit more like the role. Because a lot of that overeating was part of it. They felt that it was a kind of myth that the way to have a beautiful voice was to be quite big and bosomy and fat-stomached and so on. That's been disproved, because now you see the most gorgeous opera singers, ravishing voices, looking great, looking like great performers. And of course, they're much fitter, and they're much lither, and they're much more believable as actresses, singing actresses on stage.
Oh yes, the movement and I mean, extraordinary. Some of the positions that people will sing in. You know, they will be fainting, they will be falling, they will be supported. And you think, where is the lungs even going? I'm just talking about looks. I've just been watching The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is theatre filmed in lockdown. Yeah. All of you separately, a very creepy, strange collaboration. Very interesting, by a set of local theatres, including the Wolsey, which is, of course, just up the road from me in Ipswich. And that was interesting, but a curious and odd, sort of almost, it must have felt a sterile way to work. How has it been for you in lockdown, doing the work you've done?
Well, that was the only sort of live show in that none of us were there together. We did it as if we were picking over the story of Dorian Gray, which is now modern day, with all the kind of dramas of FaceTime and tweeting and so on. And it was as though I was being interviewed on a laptop like this by Stephen Fry on a laptop somewhere else, inquiring and inquisiting and me saying, and then scenes. And one or two of the scenes had two actors in, but very, very few. Most of us were giving our performances solo. And it's terribly odd, because you not only miss the shine you get off working with other people, you miss the audience. And all performers will tell you there's any kind of performance at all will say what we miss is the audience, because for some reason the heat, the intensity. We have a phrase in the theatre which is to shine your lamps on someone, and it means when you're not actually speaking, if in some way you turn your head or focus your intention towards the person who is speaking, it's called shining your lamps on, and they become incandescent. People literally glow with it. And that's the glow which comes from the audience, which is their attention, which bathes us all in a kind of light, knowing that they're waiting for the story to unfold. You never get that in a film, incidentally, because on a film, you just do your part, which might be completely out of sequence. 6 months later, when it's all scissored together, and your part might be much diminished, or the scene you thought was really important can be shot over your shoulder, not on your face, emoting like fury. And then you've almost lost the story and you can't remember, and you have to big it up. And lots of performances have been made in the editing suite, and lots have been cut out and so on. But we're not in control of our work. What we love about theatre is that we're in control of what we say. As we say it, nobody can stop it. Nobody can stop it. It goes out from you to the audience, and it's different every single night. Not massively different, but just enough for people to know that they've got the one and only, which is why I'm crazy about live performance.
But the difference, I mean, quite apart from this difference between live performance and film and radio and so on in the ordinary way, I mean, the lockdown year has been, it's taken it that step further to a terrible sort of distant sense of sterility. I mean, you've also, I should mention, you've also done a radio series with Roger Allam, Conversations from a Long Marriage, which goes on. And again, that must have a weird and remote feeling.
No, that was okay. We went into a studio together. We were in a studio together. Same room, screens. So usually when you do it, you've got a shared microphone. So this time, because this is the second series, we didn't have a shared mic, but we were there. At least we could feel each other's presence and talk to each other, you know, between takes and so on. But it isn't the way to work. We'll all go on doing it because we're fanning the flames and keeping everything alive. And I think people have been totally brilliant. And I think one of the most brilliant protagonists of all this is Wasfi Khani, who's the eminence rose behind Grange Park Opera, because the things she's managed to do in this lockdown period have been simply astonishing. And just only, I think it was only last night, that L'Heure Espagnole went out, which was shot in a clock shop. She's astonishing the way that she manages things. It isn't in the end opera, as we all know, but nothing's the same. You know, if you watch the cricket at the moment, they're great empty grounds and they just have to play in the dull roar of a crowd that doesn't exist. So we've all got to do our best and continue, because it will change and then it'll be back to normal again. And we'll look back at this and say, never, ever, ever let it go to as dark as it's been for so many theatres, theatre folk, show folk, audiences.
Have you been a good lockdowner yourself? Are you sort of you're cheerful and tolerant ways? Have they been tested? Have you reached that stage which some of us reach from time to time? I certainly do, of just actually head on the table and you think, I can't stand this any longer. How will it go on forever? How have you been? How has you been temperamental?
Well, I've been lucky because lockdown came when I had 3 episodes into Finding Alice. So we had the 3 episodes of that to do much later when lockdown was pulled up for a bit later on in the year. But I also
you should mention this is a television
series.
The
television series is starring King Hawes.
You play her rather appalling
horrible
mother. Actually.
Horrible mother. I'm in the period now of horrible mothers. But I also did 3 programs going around the United Kingdom called Home Sweet Home, which harks back to my faraway upbringing in the Far East, where we all talked about going home, but none of us had a home here, or maybe had even been there. But it was called home. And of course, now it is my home sweet home. I just adore the British Isles and our countries. We couldn't get to Ireland, we couldn't get to the Republic because quarantine stopped that. But we went around England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and I fell in love all over again with this country. And I'm hoping that a lot of people who might not be able to travel abroad for holidays will suddenly think, that looked really nice. Should we go there? Should we go there? Should we go there? Because this country is astonishing and it's got such kind people and such fascinating things. So I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
I must just ask you, I mean, this may come up again in questions about your activism, because you've led a delegation of an all-party group in favour of the rights of Gurkhas who fought with our army and needed rights to resettle here. A great sense of solidarity with indigenous people, like the Dongriya, I think it is in India. There's a Lumley Research Fellowship in Oxford, what was set up about indigenous people again and indigenous rights. Does this come down, do you think, from your family, from India, from your father? Is there a public service thing always running alongside behind the acting and performing thing? Do you feel you need to make differences?
Yes, and I'm also quite nosy and quite bossy, so I'm quite interested in things. So I'm interested about a lot of things. And then as my name has become more familiar, or my face has become more familiar, your head is higher above the parapet and people come to you with extraordinary things and say, do you think you could help us with this? And you go, I had no idea that was going on. Of course I'll help if I can. Because charity, which it isn't charity work, it isn't really even campaigning. It's just helping out when you can. And I was taught to do that. And my parents always did. My father was a regular soldier with the Gurkhas. That was his career. And my mother adored everything. She loved things. And although she, being a diplomat's daughter, sat at Maharaja's tables eating off gold plates sometimes, her greatest passion were the ones who couldn't speak for themselves, those who'd been overlooked, which is usually the poor, the needy, those in desperate need or hardship, and animals and wildlife and worms and slugs and everything that was sort of trodden on or overlooked. She loved that, and she always fought for the underdog. So I think that a lot of this came from them, but I never felt it as a duty. I've always loved to do it. I love helping people. And also I love saying yes. I love to volunteer. Before the sentence is over, I put my arm up because there's such excitement to be had. Even if it's boring, it's different and it's exciting. You can think of a way out of it or round it or to make it funny.
We're getting some nice questions through now. We must start some nice questions.
Good.
A lot of them, I have to say, are simply love bombing you, so I'm not going to read those out in case you get big-headed. Wouldn't allow that. Yes, let's have a look. Where are we? Yes, here we are. Here's a nice one. This comes up sometimes. We talked about Shakespeare. You love Shakespeare. You have not been asked to do Shakespeare on stage, and this is a disgrace. Which Shakespeare character would you like to play? You've said you're too old for Juliet, but I mean, frankly, if McKellen can be Hamlet at 80, I don't see why not.
Somebody said to that, who's going to play his mother?
Absolutely. I was rather hoping for a sort of middle-aged Ophelia, actually, you know, having a really bad menopause and shouting her head off at him. But that would be rewriting. Well, do you have a character that
I'd love to do Rosalind. I did her once in an amateur production, and I love doing that. I'm too old for Rosalind now, but in my next incarnation, Libby, when I should become a proper serious actress and start off much younger, Rada will beg me to go in, and I might say, do you know, I'm not sure I need it because I just have these bones. I'm kind of used to it now. And I'd love to play Rosalind. I'd love to do Rosalind.
I'd give you Paulina in A Winter's Tale, actually, the one who sorts everything out, makes the statue come alive. Yeah. You could do that. Oh dear, there's someone called John here who wants you to play Lear. But Glenda's done that. Absolutely. Have you ever thought of going into Parliament?
No.
Says here.
No, I've had a glimpse of it during the Gurkha Justice campaign. I have a look at the corridors of power, and it doesn't appeal to me because it's too slow, Libby. I like things to be done. I want people to do things now. I don't want it to go into some committee in a month's time and then people to say, we'll think about this or look at it more closely. I can't bear all that. I want it to be done now. So I wouldn't mind being a benevolent dictator, but I don't want to be in Parliament.
Yes, let's see. Oh, here's an interesting one after what I mentioned earlier. It says, Joanna, your facial expressions are unique. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
That just goes to show.
It does indeed. I think probably all our facial expressions are unique. But thank you.
Oh, here's a nice one. Sorry, I froze up a second there. Yes. Here's someone who's 23 today. It's Amy. And Amy says, Joanna, what would you tell yourself at this age if you had the chance? Think back to 23, you're working, you're a model. What would you tell yourself?
I'd stop modelling. I had a 2-year-old child to look after. I was desperately on the lowest rungs of acting. What to do? Don't be afraid. Quite a lot of being young is afraid of how you look, afraid of what people will think of you, it doesn't mean to go out and be bloody awful and dressed like a rag, but don't hold this over yourself. Stop thinking about yourself. I had to kind of, because this seemed important. My face is my fortune, so she said. But try not to think about yourself. Think about other people. Be adventurous. Be daring. As the Dalai Lama said, approach cooking and love with random ferocity or something. I mean, he said something, I don't think he said exactly those words, but he said, just go mad for cooking and love. I think that's rather a nice idea. But don't be afraid. Be scrupulously punctual, little Amy.
It was a daring thing, actually. You just mentioned your child. You had your child very, very young, your son, and that was quite daring. I mean, single mother back then. I mean, I can remember the frisson of fear and nervousness and sense of shame of that period, because I'm not far behind your age. That was brave, that wasn't it? That was you to hell with the world. I know what I'll do.
It wasn't really to hell with the world. I was told I couldn't have babies, so even when I was pregnant, the doctor said, you're not having a baby, maybe it's cancer. So when Jamie arrived, he was a great surprise. And I luckily had parents who adored me and adored him. And I was supported by them. But at the same time, he was born in 1967. There were girls being forced to give their babies up, unbearable. And so I was terribly, terribly lucky. But it wasn't really, I mean, any single parent on their own will know how difficult it is when you're both the breadwinner and the housekeeper and the parent. It's juggling with time as much as anything. It's never juggling with love. It's juggling with money a lot of the time. But it's okay. Just slog at it. Be brave. You know what I mean? Life isn't easy. French said, "La lutte, c'est la vie." Struggle is life, or life is struggle. You know, that's the name of the game. So don't go boo-hoo. What's happened to me? Why me? Just get up and do it.
I think this question might possibly be from somebody who was at school with you. Was there Miss Bentley at your school?
Yes, she was.
Well, here we are. Mary says, hello. Did you always know you wanted to perform even as a small child? Because I remember you reciting Meg Merrilies in Miss Bentley's study. You packed, unlike the rest of us, you packed it with interest and emphasis, so different to our stilted rendition Are you going to give us Meg
No,
Merrilies
it's like
again
it's
now?
old Meg. She was a gypsy and lived upon the moors. Her bed, it was the brown heath turf. Her house was out of doors. It was lovely. And how sweet of Mary to remember that in Miss Bentley's study. This was when I was about between 8 and 10, I guess. I love learning poetry, Libby. I love learning things. I don't like screens. I don't look at screens. I don't do FaceTime. I don't do any social media. I try to look out because I know, having been abandoned on a desert island and on my long trips and travels, that the only thing that can keep you sane is your own mind. And that's why the idea of losing your mind is the most frightening thing on earth. Far, far worse than anything else is the idea of going mad. But if you furnish your head, your clever, clever head, with all sorts of memories and things beautiful music, beautiful. You've got to cram it with beautiful things, beautiful pictures and stuff you can remember, delicious, kind people, wonderful books, words, poetry. Cram that into your head, not trivia. Don't do trivia because it won't stay with you.
And tunes. You're married to a musician. I wake up every morning with a different tune in my head. And there's no reason why it should be anything. It could be anything from the Easter hymn to a snatch of opera to Bat Out of Hell. But there's always a new tune in my head.
I'm the same as you. I wake up practically whistling, you know? Isn't it funny? They come in and...
What was this morning?
Yeah.
Can you remember
they
what was
creep
this
in,
morning?
all sorts of thoughts and ideas and music creep into your head during the night, and you wake up literally with a song you haven't thought about for 35 years. Suddenly, there it is. Extraordinary.
There's a question here. It says it's from Wasfi, which I assume is Wasfi Khani of the Great Grange Park Opera, which we're also celebrating tonight. And the question is, what are you cooking for dinner tonight, Joanna?
My husband has gone away, so I'm not cooking. What I shall have is probably an avocado. I know that's out of fashion now. Some peanuts, which I like very much. Some chicory. Sainsbury's sent me a message saying I was the second highest chicory eater in the region. So I feel that's...
What?
Is
this some kind of... Did you know this was another award? I mean, come on, there's BAFTA and there's the OB and there's the second highest chicory eater.
I know, it's really nice, isn't it? But no cooking tonight, Wasfi. And no drinking. I've given up drinking for Lent too.
Yes, where what have we got here now? Oh yes, how do you detox yourself from your daily challenges? Or don't you think they're toxic?
I don't think they're toxic. It's lovely if you've got somebody. My husband Stephen is very good for talking to about things, but I don't really drag them in and drag them about. Challenges sometimes are not within your grasp. You know, some of the things that you wish would change are things that are happening in the world. You're always trying to think of that. But do try to think of small things you can do. A great one I've just invested in quite an expensive system of getting rid of spare plastic which doesn't go into the recycling bin. And I couldn't bear throwing it away into landfill. So I've got a cardboard box which is collected whenever I send it in. And I cram all the cellophane and tops of yogurt pots and everything that can't be recycled. I wash it and it goes into there. And it's made me feel much happier. I think it's a sort of sense of discipline helps with the day and putting things to bed before you go to sleep. A pattern, make your desk neat, even if it's not cleared. Write a list of the things you've got to do tomorrow because you didn't do them today. Settle it all down, read a book, gradually calm down and then sleep well. And don't fret. That's what I'd say to 23-year-old Amy, happy birthday little one, is don't fret about things. Package them up and leave them for fretting time. Say tomorrow morning at 11 to 11:15, I'll really be worried about stuff, but not now.
There's a question here. Are you from Janet says, are you involved in your own community in any way? I mean, this is a very 2021 question, isn't it? One does,
yes.
Everyone feels they want part of something. Are you involved?
Yes, I am. Where we live, we've lived here for 30 years. It's south of the river, it's in South Lambeth. And I lived in the sort of Holland Park region in Addison Road for 18 years. And I don't think one shopkeeper up there ever remembered my name or that I'd been in the shop before. Come south of the river to where we are in Stockwell, and it's all friendliness, all affection, all kindliness and talking, and there are various things which one can help with. I don't propose to go into them here, but you know, there are the people's clubs and all kinds of things which you can get involved with. Even if you haven't the time, you can help in some other way. And I love it. Saving the library. They were going to shut the library down, make it into a gym. Who cares? You don't need a gym to touch your toes. You can just do it now or go for a run. I'm anti-gyms at the moment, anti too many gyms. I understand that they're important, and I'm not being down on gym people. I'm just saying too many. We want to keep libraries. Libraries are more important than gyms.
How about staying connected with never mind community? There's another nice question here. This very weird year, how did you stay connected with your family? You know, with
Jamie,
son and
Jamie and Tessa,
yeah.
and Emily live right up in the north of Scotland. So we haven't been able to see them because even when lockdown was sort of released here, it wasn't in Scotland. So we couldn't get up there and they couldn't come down here. You can do exactly what we're doing, Libby. You can Zoom or you can Skype, but actually you can just talk on the telephone. I sometimes find it's a bit challenging when you have to go and be seen on a screen because you've got to try to look sort of halfway nice, I think, because it's not fair on people at the other end if you look as though you've just crept out of bed or haven't bothered to comb your hair. So you've got to make a bit of an effort. And, you know, telephones are fine. Telephones are fine. Writing is fine. I love postcards. I love the sound of the post coming through the door and seeing a handwritten envelope, which might mean a letter, which isn't asking for something, it's just talking. What could be nicer than that? So there are many ways to keep in touch. And of course, remember when I was young and out in the Far East, my mother, we had a telephone, but you never rang. I don't think you could ring overseas. I suppose she spoke to her sister once in a year. I mean, I quite like being on my own too, so I don't mind not talking to people.
The future, of course, there are not going to be all these wonderful letters that we get from the past. That's a worry, isn't it? There won't be people's letters so much. The question here says, is that a large magnolia behind you? Is it a large magnolia?
This, my beloved questioner, this is the pear tree, which is enormous, had to be pruned. Its height had to be brought down by a bit. And because it was just about, as you can see, just about to come out into bloom, I collected some of the branches. I've got some here, I've got some over there, I've got some in other rooms, which are just sitting here with their feet in water and just beginning to come out. They won't really come into flower, I don't think they might. But I dragged it in because I wanted you to have something quite nice to look at. So when your attention wandered, you'd go, "Ooh, is that a magnolia?" And the answer is no, it's pear.
I think it looks great. Jason asked, do you watch RuPaul's Drag Race? And if so, what would be your drag name?
I don't know. I have seen it. And I was once invited. I was going to go on it before, just when lockdown came and the show I was going to be on was cancelled. And then all those lovely drag queens disappeared because that was the end of their time as well. I don't know what my name, I don't know how you get a good, cool drag name. I don't know what it would be. I think Joe is pretty good because it's quite kind of cool. But it would have to be Joe something, wouldn't it? I don't know. Libby, are you very up with these sorts of names?
I'd stick with Patsy. You know, there's a formula for getting your drag name. I've forgotten what it is. You know, I always sort of think of myself as Cherry Crumble or something rather homely like that. Here we are. Another question. Yes. Yes. Where are we? Is there a celebrity that you've met who you didn't expect to like but did? Or is there anyone you expected to like but you were disappointed? They want you to be mean here or kind.
I met James Mason. I loved James Mason steadfastly from school when we saw the film of Julius Caesar. I'm not sure he didn't play Brutus, and it was a completely wonderful black and white film, and I think we were studying Julius Caesar at the time. And I met him much, much later on a terrace in the south of France. And my heart was beating, and I thought, I'm standing next door to James Mason. And God bless you, James, because you've gone now from this earth. But the conversation wasn't scintillating. That was partly my fault because I was dumbstruck, but it was quite dull. And I loved him so much. So I thought, maybe it's better not to meet the people you really adore. I think Marlon Brando was Mark Antony in that. It was fantastic stuff. But mostly when you meet people, when I met Ava Gardner, because I was in a film with her, I thought, oh, what can she be like? She's just a diva. And do you know what she was? Divine. She was divine. She was beautiful and funny and smelt of tuberoses and was wicked and naughty and had great green eyes and laughed a lot. I loved her.
Yeah, lovely. How do you deal, another question here from Anna, how do you deal with being famous in places you go to? This business of being recognized, this, you know, some actors absolutely hate it and others maybe enjoy it. I don't know. What's it like for you? Are you okay with it?
It's kind of how you behave, because I always go on the tube and I queue in outside post offices and things and go shopping in the ordinary supermarkets and so on. Because I know that if you have people holding people back on the street, as I once saw Steve McQueen doing, and getting out of a car, and the crowd would go, why are we being held back, looking over there? And then suddenly you see Steve McQueen with dark glasses on, going into a shop in the King's Road. He went, oh my God, it's Steve McQueen, oh my God. Now, if he'd taken his glasses off and just walked in going hi, people would go, hi, guess who I saw? Steve McQueen. But there would have been no hustle and bustle about it. So I'm fine, because I'm lucky enough to just be able to walk about completely normally. You get used to people looking at you, and the thing to do is look back and smile. Sometimes they're taken aback. Just like me, when I spoke to Nish Kumar the other day, and I was talking to him quite normally. He said, you think we've met, don't you? And I said, haven't we? And he said, no. So that was easy. I knew who he was, and I knew his face was so familiar. And I thought I must have met him. And that's what a lot of the time people just think that you've met them. I always think people, this is my homily for today, Libby. Strangers are just friends you haven't met yet. There we are.
There was a wonderful remark made to me once by Sarah Brown, Gordon Brown's wife, when she was on holiday and then just across the river from us, where we live. And I said, are you finding you get recognised all the time? Because there have been quite a lot of pictures of her. And she said, no. Said, because I'm perfectly scruffy. She said, people who have their hair recently done, people always assume they must be someone if you've just had a blow dry, and they look at you again. Said, if you just look like a scruffy old mother on the beach with a couple of children, nobody looks again because you're just another woman. I thought that was rather
very good.
You know.
And also, if you do want people to look at you, don't smile and put on dark glasses, because people always think you're important. I never wear dark glasses because I can't bear the idea of ducking out of people's view. I like people. I like to look in their eyes, and I like people smiling back. I like to smile at people. And you can't really do that with dark glasses because they don't know who you are.
Now, there's someone here called David. We're going to have to stop quite soon, but this is very important. When I was 12, I wrote to you at ITV, but you never wrote back. My sister signed me up today for my 55th birthday this week. Will you please say hi to David? This is a big moment. Come on, facial expressions, bring them on.
Oh, David, I've got to say, I'm so sorry. I actually answer all my fan mail, so ITV didn't pass it on to me. David, this is very sad. At 55, you must have been a little boy, a little tiny boy, and I'm just very touched that you remember me at all, David. But I remember you now, and I know it's your birthday this week, and I'm keeping the day itself a secret from the rest of the listeners. But happy birthday, David.
And one from Jenny. Do you ever appear without lipstick, or do you put it on even to go to the shops?
No.
It's a bit harsh.
No, I go with face nue. I go, but I've been, I mean, on things like Desert, My Girl Friday and things. I've appeared nothing. I mean, it's not a thing. I put on makeup this evening because I thought, out of respect for the viewers, and I thought it would look nice to try to look nice. And I put on my diamond necklace that my husband gave me. And my special Westwood ring to dress up for you. But of course I don't wear lipstick to go to the shops. Also, with a mask, it doesn't matter what you wear. And sometimes I put on heavy eye makeup and sometimes I don't. But mostly I don't.
Well, there's heaps more people which we cannot fit in because I have to do the winding up bit. But it says that you should be the first woman, you should have been the first woman Doctor Who.
I was.
And your drag name has to be the name of your first pet and the name of the street where you first lived in, which makes me Treacle Leverett. I don't know what it makes you. Work that one out. And Waspy is saying, I need to hear your favourite poem.
My favourite poem is The Tale of the Wandering Angus by W.B. Yeats. I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head and cut and stripped a hazel wand and tied a berry to a thread. And anyway, I won't do it all, but it's simply ravishing and it ends up and pluck till time and times are done, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun.
Tale of the Wandering Angus, W.B. Yeats, everybody out there. And do you know, very quickly, drag name, first pet and the street
It's
where
Judy
first
Addison, but it's not a very exciting name. It's Judy Addison. Is that a very good name?
No, it's because you didn't call your first pet something more glamorous.
It wasn't my pet.
Anyway.
It was our dog in the army, Judy.
Right. I have to say, I'm just looking at the clock. I have to do this clock thing. I have to say thank you, Joanna, especially thank you, Joanna. Can you hear them all cheering, everybody?
Yes.
Voices, can hear them all. And thank you for subscribing to it. And Telegraph subscriber people will get a survey shortly. So please take part because they want to know what you think. And everybody, remember to book tickets to Grange Park Opera Summer Season. It begins at midnight tonight. Some of us are going to have to stay up to get our Bryn Terfel tickets. But Joanna, it's been a joy. These things are not always a joy. I hate Zoom.
Well, I love it because you're on it. I love it, and I love you, glamorous Libby.
So,
Libby, best writer, best assessor of character, best head girl. I had no idea you were years younger than me. I always thought you were in the senior prefect room.
A bit younger, only a bit. Good night, all.
Good night.